So, does anyone care to touch on this further?
So as it turns out, I guess the little boy was afraid of his daddy standing on his Second Amendment rights and carrying his Smith& Wesson 40 on his hip on the regular. Um, says
I can relate to that these days. Um, my dad is still very deep in MAGA. He will never leave, but he he also won't come to the city because he's terrified because of the propaganda that he's heard. My name is Jerry. I left MAGA, and in this episode, I'm telling on myself. So I went and randomly pulled an episode out of my archives from over on Rumble, one of my old live streams, and I I just pulled this one at random because it's about a year. It's a year and a day actually before I officially announced my full separation from MAGA. I think it's rather interesting how because I kind of scanned forward a little bit on this, and yes, I did set it at 1.5 speed for the purpose of conserving time. But yeah, this is it's kind of interesting how things turned out. But again, this is a year before I officially separated from MAGA.
we got this. I know CNN is age, but still, it's good to know what the other side is saying. Um, I need to open that a little
And I still feel that way. It's good to hear what the other side is saying, to know what the other side is saying.
more. There we go. Son testifies about texting his father after January 6th. What I find interesting here is that Jackson Reffitt became a key witness for prosecutors because he reported his father's far right political extremism to the FBI on Christmas Eve 2020.
And bear in mind, at that point in time, I was still far right, like further right than my dad.
Still, I want to know where he traveled. But hang on. There was mention in the interview a while ago of baited questions, loaded questions. Um, it also says here in the CNN article, um,
And the long pauses are another reason why I sped it up because I was interacting directly with the live stream. Um, both of them. The top chat that you see there right below my camera feed is from Rumble, and then the one below that is from Pill.
I yeah, that would be a good that's a really good question. What was Jackson's body language in the courtroom? And well, of course, we'll never know. We'll never know. But
And that was definitely the sort of thing that we were always watching for. What was their body language? What were they really thinking? We okay, anyway, yeah, it was like paranoid all the time.
but yeah, and of course, the judge is probably on that side anyway. But anyway, before the 2016 election, Jackson Reffitt said he and his father were very close. But Guy Reffitt, quote, snowballed into far right extremism, end quote, and his son became increasingly paranoid. On Thursday, a long haired boy spoke, a long haired young man, boy, spoke at times in a near whisper, taking long pauses as he spoke about his tears and his fears and his father's politics. He confirmed text messages among his parents, his sisters, and himself discussing the Capitol riot, and he listened to audio clips of his family bantering that then turned into discussion over guns being illegal to carry on federal property. So as it turns out, I guess the little boy was afraid of his daddy standing on his Second Amendment rights and carrying his Smith& Wesson 40 on his hip on the regular. Um, says
I can relate to that these days. Um, my dad is still very deep in MAGA. He will never leave, but he he also won't come to the city because he's terrified because of the propaganda that he's heard. So this young man, um, as we can see, almost over 3.5 years later, that his concerns about his father were valid. And at that point in time, I was mocking them, and I hold them true to my heart now because I understand how dangerous these people are. I used to be one of them.
As here, but Jackson Reddick made it clear he disagreed with his father's far-right political beliefs, explaining that his father wore a Trump hat nearly every day and wore his Smith & Wesson handgun in a holster pretty much all the time,
Now, my dad doesn't carry, but he's very proud of his Trump hats.
end quote. It would be his nightstand or on his nightstand if it wasn't on his hip, the son said. So, because he wears a hat that says Trump or Make America Great Again or 45, whatever, and packs a 40 on his hip or on his nightstand because he's willing to protect himself. His son is scared of him when they were close just 4 years, well, no, 6 years ago now, which means the boy would have only been 13. Let's see, 13. That's high school age, right? Yeah, like freshman in high school, maybe eighth grade. Let's see, 2016. Yeah, that marks a rather interesting turning point in our education program too.
Yeah, I bought into that as well. As you can tell, I drank a lot of the Kool-Aid, but then again, I was indoctrinated from the age of 8 that it was Republican and Christianity that were going to, or Republicans and Christianity that were going to keep America alive, and that everybody else was trying to tear it apart. And so I was 8 years old in '72. Nixon was in office. My parents were campaigning for Kit Bond, and things were relatively wild. Vietnam was still going on, and yeah, there was a lot. Anyway, let's get back to this.
That's when things started getting really crazy on the woke side, when they started pushing so damn hard.
Yeah, did you hear that? I would use that term. Yeah, things got crazy on the woke side. I didn't even know what I was talking about. I was in a cult.
Exactly, it wasn't far. And oh my goodness, the whole context of left and right, something that needs to be understood within the context of history, and 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 in reference to um, right wing and comparison to Hitler. The thing about it was there.
Wait for it.
What did his dad do? Well, let's find out. Um, I was hidden somewhere with that. Got it.
Yeah, so as you can tell, with interacting directly with the live chat, I was always doing research on the fly because that's how we did it. If you had a question, you went and looked it up. Um, but we also primarily leaned into the right wing outlets. So if we were searching for a particular story that popped up on both or on all ABC, CNN, Fox News, 100% Fed Up, and Gateway Pundit, well, we're going to go for one of the three conservative rags instead of the two what were then recognized as woke outlets by myself and still by these others. Things have really changed,
Oh, see what I can come up with.
but still haven't changed.
Da, da, da.
Oh, I don't know if you have noticed the tickers at the bottom on that Chiron.
Okay, that's not going to give me what I'm looking for. Guy rep it. Work history. Maybe that'll work.
Oh, and I don't think I ever got back to the Nazis and the right wing thing. At that point in time, I was under the impression that the European right wing, left wing thing were were s- somehow different. I don't even remember exactly what it was. The right wing was left wing was right wing, or something to that effect. I think that's what it was.
Let's see. What was I saying? All right, let's see what this is. Guy rep it biography 13 things about the Capitol riot suspect from Wiley, Texas. Oh, he's from Texas. Well, heck, I've seen memes made of Texas. You know, somebody goes to the liquor store and buys a six pack and get a free gun. Actually, hang on. That was something else I was gonna bring up. Um, before we go look at Guy Repit. This really caught my attention because Jackson Jackson turned his dad in on Christmas Eve 2020, right? That was what the other article said. This article from the Daily Beast states on Christmas Eve 2020, Jackson Reffitt was struggling to connect with his father, so he tried a new tactic, emphasizing their shared disdain for then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Quote, I still hate Mitch, end quote. The now 19-year-old texted his father in Texas, family group chat. Quote, I
And it appears that Mitch McConnell is disliked even more now in 2026.
think every living soul does, end quote. But instead of placating Guy Reffitt, a pandemic-idled oil rig manager who had grown, quote, most distant, end quote, since 2016, before ultimately joining a far-right militia group. The gripe prompted a warning. Jackson Reffitt testified in federal court on Thursday. And in this article, they don't name this. Oh, that reminds me what I was going to talk about. Right line. In this article from the Daily Beast, they don't say that that far-right militia group is the Three Percenters.
Hang on, let's see what my take was on the three percenters. Because I remember having a very distinct view, but I don't remember exactly what it was.
I got with it. Um, see, well, it's hard to say because a lot of the information that's coming out is coming out from the other side, and they're saying that Jackson said his dad used to yell and scream that allegedly Jackson. Well, no, not allegedly. Jackson said accused his father of threatening he and his sisters with their very life if they turned him in.
Okay, so I'm gonna just leave that there. Let me actually do that sort of thing again. Um, because I know a name that I need to bring to the table. Vance Bolter. Pardon me. So, uh, Vance Bolter, as you can see here, unalived Mark and Melissa Hartman. But what's really crazy is this guy, and I'll put a link to the video and or to the videos. But Vance Bolter was radicalized in college and drawn off into an outfit known as um, Christ for the Nations International. And he became a really hardcore right wing uh, uh, activist. So I'll throw the links in for that. There's some good stuff that was over on Leaving the Message. There was a couple of interviews that John did with a couple of different people. One was Vance Bolter's college roommate, and so it's quite interesting. The right still thinks that he's a left winger. They won't admit that he's one of theirs, even though all the evidence points that way. Like I said, I'll throw the links in the description, and we'll go with that. All right. Well, I try to keep this video relatively short. It looks like I did a good job of it. Just telling on myself, um, showing you, showing you how I used to think, and the fact that I was doing live research on the fly. And I just, of course, just did that again just to show you who I'm talking about on this Vance Bolter guy and remind you of him. So yeah, it was a wild ride back then, and it took a year for me to make an exit after I made that video, and that was part of a. I think that might have been. Let me go back and look. Yeah, if you look at that number right there, right down there, that's a 10-hour and 42-minute live stream. Yeah, I used to put in the grind, and I did that 3 days a week on the regular. Plus, the guy that I worked with at the time, and prior to that, he was also running 10 hours a night, 3 nights a week. So between the two of us, I was spending 60 hours a week online producing content or participating in the production of content. And that didn't count all the research and everything that I was doing. So it's no wonder that the relationship that I was in around that time or just prior to that time um, fell apart. I didn't have any time for her. I didn't have any time for the life that I was supposed to have because I got derailed. That's a story for another time. Anyway, if you've enjoyed listening to me tell on myself, please do me a favor and give me a thumbs up. Um, if you haven't subscribed, I'd appreciate that. Share this if you wanna let people know where I was and where I am now, because I'm actively fighting against this stuff. You can check other content that I have that's more recently, and I know some individuals that might not necessarily agree with me, but with the cover-ups that's been happening, I'm pretty sure that certain proclivities of the movement as a whole are are pretty obvious. I mean, they're not they wanted the Epstein files, but now they don't believe the Epstein file because yeah, they're a hoax, but they were going to take everybody down, but there's been arrests of them. It's crazy, man. It's crazy over there. But yeah, and then they're trying to bring in Armageddon. So as far as I see it, I'm just going to bluntly say it. I personally think MAGA is a pedophilic death cult. And again, I grew up in a doomsday cult, so what do I know? All right. Until the next video, take care of yourself so you can help take care of each other. Get the rest you need and keep track of those fluids.
Everybody